I'm back. It's been an interesting week. Didn't get any time to work on it. And a couple days ago, our baby decided that she wanted to try to come early. Turns out she didn't. She's not due for another 4 weeks, so we're going to try to keep her in the oven for another couple weeks, try to make it to her due date. So that's a little bit of a scare, but crisis averted. So I'm in here today. I was able to get in and get the hole drilled for the wiring harness, so that is in there. I still got to mess with that. I got to run the oil pressure sender wire from the Dakota sensor through that grommet there. The brackets came in for the ECU. I've actually found these online at an off-road shop. That's like the second time I've found something for this truck on an off-road shop for building buggies and whatnot, but I think that's pretty trick. So that's going to actually mount over on the driver or passenger side. Put some grommets in here for wires. I'm going to run my power wires for my fuel pump in and out there, so it's to the relay on the relay module. My BIM module came in, so I'm going to figure this out, get that thing going. Today's task is to get these wires, get everything that needs power down here, get it hooked up, because I've got borrowed some crimpers from a buddy so I can tap into this. I spent some time and figured out where all of the signals were. I took this apart and looked at all the wiring diagrams and figured out, in the American Auto Wire, they have a fuse for the clock, which actually runs, it's the hot wire that goes to the radio, but you share it with the clock if you have it. So there's actually a pigtail back there. I had forgotten about it, so I'm going to tap into that for the clock. For the gauges, I'm going to pull some various wires out of the cluster harness here to power various things on the Dakota module, and the gauges themselves. These two wires here are my fan leads. I'm actually using them. They are in this harness. They are the vehicle speed sensor. If you're going to use an electronic vehicle speed sensor to run gauges, those are the wires. So I'm not. The wires, they go through the bulkhead onto the other side, so I'm going to use those for the fan. It's got a nice little harness here for, I can see that, get that on. There we go. For connecting everything. So that's the plan for today, is get some wires run, get everything situated so I can get the carpet back down and start working on, just pounding out this thing, getting the rest of this stuff done. So I know it seems like a broken record. I feel like I'm going in circles here, but this wiring thing, there's nothing worse than getting into a project of somebody else's and wiring. 9 times out of 10, people do wiring terribly, and it's a fire waiting to happen. So I'm trying to think this thing through, trying to do it so that, if I were to sell this truck, or God forbid something to happen to me and somebody work on this truck, it all makes sense. That's kind of my plan. I'm an OCD engineer, so that doesn't help. So like I say, goal for today is to get some wiring done. So we'll pick back up here in a little bit. So after a bit of cussing and screaming and scratching my head, I finally have all of the wires that I need to run down this way for the ECU, for the TAC module, and for both of my Dakota modules. I'm going to extend this thing. Actually, I'm going to extend it out 2 feet just to give myself some slack. So I'm going to do that tonight. I've got actually got an entire wiring harness from an 03 Yukon, so I've got all these wires. I already found them all. Extend those out. Everything is good. I ended up taking out the steering column just because it was easier to do all the wiring without it there. So I've got all of the wires back here that I need for everything. I switched out the brake switch, which you really can't see. Let me get the light in there. Yep, there it is. Put the new brake switch in so that it has the torque converter release on it, as well as the brake light switch. So this truck, when I wired it, it does not have a third brake light, the high mount or whatever they call it. So that wire actually is over there. I never did use it. So the ECU needs to see a brake signal wire, or brake signal, when the brakes are applied. So I'm actually going to use that wire and string it back over and come out and down under the bundle of wires all the way back to the ECU. So that worked out perfect. That's about it. A lot of the kicking and screaming was because I was sitting here trying to just double check circuits to make sure things were switched with ignition and stayed on when it went to the start position. And they all did, but I couldn't figure out at first because all of the circuits were, I was showing continuity to ground. It didn't make any sense. I had the positive lead from the voltmeter in the basically where the power wire feeds the back of the bulkhead there, and to power the whole system. And I was getting, it was just really weird. It was showing continuity to ground, showing continuity to battery, which it should, and then it was also showing continuity to ignition, even with the key off. So it didn't make any sense at all. The accessory was working, but I don't know. So anyway, after I called to my dad to make sure I wasn't going crazy, and I called to a buddy of mine, we all kind of three figured out that it was just a dummy mistake. Both the doors were open, so that caused all of the courtesy lights to be on, the dome light and the lights under the dash, which are incandescents, so they were going to ground. So it was taking the whole system to ground. Duh. But anyway, we figured it out, and everything checked out, so everything's good. It just took a while to kind of figure out what was going on and make sure I didn't have a dead short somewhere in the system. So that's it for right now. I'm going to go home and spend some time with the family and work on wiring, lengthening this harness here. Then we'll get back in and keep plugging away. So the plan has changed again. Surprise, surprise. That seems to be the motto of my builds. Anyway, as you guys saw in that time lapse, I extended the tech harness that goes up to the pedal. So now that I've got plenty of room to run it down here, I went and changed paths again. I am now going to mount both the BIM module and the gauge control module underneath the dash. I'm actually going to mount it up under right there. I'm actually going to use some, I got some industrial strength Velcro. I'm going to put it up there with. I just got to thinking, I was trying to run too many wires down this way. It was going to be like 12 wires all in all, in addition to the TAC module harness. So it was just going to be kind of bulky and a lot of wires and a lot of extending wires. So actually my dad came down and we kind of were just spitballing, and he kind of nudged me, and I decided that's actually a pretty good idea. So we're going to put those up under the dash. So I did want to make sure I went and grabbed my OPD2 cable that runs the BIM module, and it is actually long enough to get up there. So sorry I didn't videotape any of it. It was just really boring. Lots of zip tying things up, taking things back down, just kind of seeing how I wanted to make it work. So right now, all of the wires are good to go. I've got all of the wires here that are going to be for the Dakota control module. I got all the power and all the signal wires for blinkers, high beam indicator, the clock. Everything's ready to go. I've got wires. So I've got this accessory connector, this big bundle that I keep talking about here is actually routed back up here. So I kind of got it out of the way. That right there is all of the cluster connectors, and this wire actually, it's coming up here, is actually coming through the firewall is the OBD2, it's the oil pressure sender. So instead of running it down here, I'm going to run it back through here. It actually goes to the same hole I don't know if you can see that or not, but no, goes through the same hole the factory oil pressure came through. So kind of cool. So that worked out. So I've got my bundle of wires here that go down. I got a switch positive. I've got the both brake switch leads, the 12 volts when pressed, the 12 volts when released. For the torque converter, I've got the third brake clamp. Oh yeah, that's actually going for the brakes applied. So the only thing I have is running from down here up to the cluster is going to be a check engine light. So I've got to extend one of those wires to run all the way up here in this bundle. But that's pretty much it. So it kind of simplified things too. So I'm okay with that. So kind of kept everything clean under the dash. One thing that I thought was worth mentioning is I'm using green zip ties. When I originally installed the harness in the truck, I used kind of that whitish clear color there. And then when I reworked it, I had to do a couple changes. I used black, and this time I'm using green. And I do that to kind of demark just different times I've been in there and messed with things. It kind of just color coordinates it, kind of jogs my memory when I'm under there. So that's why all those zip ties are green. So, and that's why some of them are black and when some of them are clear. So anyway, that's kind of where it's at today. ECU is still staying on that side over there. I just haven't messed with it yet. I've been dealing with all this. TAC module is going here just to stay out of the way because I didn't want to clutter it up under the dash. So the BIM modules fit real nice, so I can keep that down here. That's pretty much it. I've been rambling here. Hopefully here in the next couple days I'll have all this wiring wrapped back up so we can kind of start getting done. I've got a checklist of things I need to finish on the motor to get that squared away. I need to get it jacked up and put it on jack stand so I can get underneath, and I got to put both speed sensors in the transmission, start hooking up the harness on the engine for good. What am I missing? Oh yeah, I'm going to reuse the fuel level wire from the stock tank that used to be here. So it's going to run across. It's just kind of temporarily taped. It's going to go through one of those holes there back to the new tank. So I'm going to have to extend that wire, and I also have to run a ground wire from the tank all the way back up. So I'll kind of run them together, and then they'll kind of tie back in. Right now you can see they're in the harness right here with the dome light. But so those will be all in there. So there is going to be actually one more wire up there. I've got to go get some wire to do that because I don't have anything long enough. But that's pretty much it. That's kind of the gist of my wiring. It's a nightmare. I've been pulling my hair out trying to figure out what I want to do, and finally have a plan, and everything looks good. Everything's working out. So I think at this point, I'm going to call it a day and end this video. And next time we should pick up, and we're going to be soldering some wires here, just doing final connections. Get everything mounted, get the ECU mounted, get the TAC module mounted, make a bracket for the fuse and relay panel there. Stick those up there and start plugging everything in and reassembling. Put steering column back in, put the gauge cluster in, carpet back down, bolt the hump down, seat back in, be done in here so I can move on to some of the other tidbits. I'm getting pretty close here. The wiring was one of the big ones. Fuel systems, the last big thing, but it's going to be pretty easy. Got some ideas on that. But for now, I appreciate everybody watching. Please like and subscribe if you'd like to. Comment with any questions, concerns, anything I'm doing wrong. I'd love to hear it. I'd love to hear anything I'm doing right. So anyway, appreciate everybody watching, and we will see you next time.